Thanks again, man, for coming out to, the show.
Coming to California.
Coming to San Francisco just for the podcast, everyone.
Yeah, it was a long drive.
You drove across the country with your dog just to be on this podcast. That's how important it is. For this, obviously, but also coming to the class and the giving a presentation. That was amazing.
Yeah, I had a great time today.
And I I had not seen it before, but I think, probably just as excited, if not more excited than the students to hear it. And it was fascinating. It was fun.
Yeah,
it was very entertaining also, which I very much appreciate. There's like a lot of presenters who have good content, but are like boring as fuck, and you were not that, so I think it was good. And you could tell because like when it ended, it's a pretty quiet group of students to be honest, but there's some interaction and they were receptive to you, so it was cool.
Yeah, I don't think I put anyone to sleep.
I don't think so.
So you've been driving around for how long now?
I've been on the road on this trip, I think 2 weeks. I started in Orlando. I left in Orlando, and I did the first presentation in Lafayette, Louisiana. Then from there, I hauled ass over to Houston. Yeah, no, it was Houston, San Antonio, El Paso, then San Diego. Then I did Orange County, San Luis Obispo, up to San Francisco. I spoke at University of San Francisco yesterday. Today I spoke to your group, but the Cal Poly group. I'm going to head out to Sacramento from here. Actually, I'm not turning around. Sacramento is in 2 days. I'm going to do the AI there. Back down to, we're supposed to do Bakersfield, and then Albuquerque, Dallas, and then we might stop in Fayetteville and do a lecture there.
So just to kind of explain to people who are like totally confused by this, I suppose. So you reside, well, now you're in Florida, which we need to get to, but you're in Florida and you're touring to give different lectures and presentations to universities, primarily schools, about architecture.
Primarily the AIA chapters.
AIA chapters about licensure, entrepreneurship.
Yeah, there's 2 lectures I give. I give a lecture called How to Pass the Architect Exam in 2020, which is nuts to bolts, really like everything, helping people figure out this architect exam. There's so much bad information out there that just keeps getting replicated over time. And so I put together a whole presentation to really help people, let's talk about all the myths and the rumors and let's get them on the straight and narrow. And talk about that. And then today I did that presentation. It's called Entrepreneurship for Young Architects. And I really share the story, kind of my journey with, I say it always starts with getting my license because I felt like, for the longest time, I needed closure. I had so much student debt, man. And I had this vision of becoming an architect, and I needed to like get closure on that. And so it was a real push for me to get my architect exam. It was a crazy journey. And after that was done, I always say, my entire life changed. Getting my license, it was not like winning the lottery, but what ended up happening was it allowed me to walk through a door, and on the other side of that door were a million other opportunities that I had no idea even existed. And that was when I started, I started the blog, which then...
Opportunities like what?
It was, I started working, I teamed up with a builder, and we started doing all these design build projects, and there was that. I had more free time. I started an Amazon business. I started the Young Architect blog. We talked about that last time I was on the podcast.
Yeah,
but
I will never forget that, the Barbie dolls.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah, I told that story
What's happening right now?
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. It just, opportunities to kind of just do things that didn't really exist. And maybe it was all in my head and maybe I was blocking myself, but I really just needed closure. Before I could move on with my life, I really needed to wrap up this architect exam thing.
Right. So you're on this tour for this time 2.5 weeks. How often are you back at your place in Florida, and how often are you on the road, and how many places do you see a year? Like, what's the density?
Yeah, it's been a little nuts. There's really no routine. There's no normal.
Well, the other question was, like, how many of these spots are lined up before you go, and how many of them get set up once you're on the road and it's just evolving?
Yeah. So, what was it? I was on your podcast like 2 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, which is wild.
I know.
Which is nuts.
I know.
Yeah, I know.
You were living in New York. I was living in New York. And I feel like a million things have happened. So what happened was the winter hit. That winter, It hit shortly after I saw you guys. I saw you in the summer. It hit the winter, and I was just miserable. I'm a wimp in the cold. I can't handle it. And I said, I'm done with these winters. I'm done with it. I can't take it anymore. And I ended up buying a giant Mercedes Sprinter van. And I said, I'm going to travel the country. I'm going to go down to Florida. My father is a CPA as well. And he was like, he does my taxes. He's like, you're getting destroyed. Your little young architect business is getting destroyed with taxes. He's like, please, go to Florida where there's no income tax. Go hang out by the beach all winter long with your dog. Go travel the rest of the country, but let's establish yourself, as an entity in Florida. So I head down to Florida with really no plans. My mom's got a place down there, but I really kind of just showed up in Florida, not really knowing anyone, and just kind of started from scratch. And I was running boot camp out of the back of the van for a while. I was also doing a lot of traveling around the United States. So last year in 2019, I did a really serious loop all the way out to, I started in Florida. We looped out to Albuquerque and then looped back to Florida. That was the big tour. I did about 35, 40 lectures on that trip. We drove 7,500 miles.
Jesus.
We was gone for like a month or like a month and a half. It was long, but then, and then after that, I, drove up to New York. I was in New York City for a little while, and then I drove across the country, and I was out in Portland, Oregon all summer long for the Young Architect Conference. And I set up, I rented like a beautiful WeWork apartment in Portland, but I was living in the van.
Yeah.
I had an office, but I didn't have an apartment. I was living in the van, and it was a lot of fun. It was cool, but just being in Portland all summer, it kind of took its toll on me. And after I got back, I was staying my girlfriend she had a little apartment in Orlando, and I was staying in her little 1-bedroom apartment. And it just wasn't big enough. And then I was like, we need a bigger place. And so at the end of December, I went and I signed a lease, me and her, for a pretty big 3-bedroom apartment in Orlando.
Whoa.
So after living in a van after pretty much being transient for 3 years and living in the van for like a year and a half, 2 years, I was like, let's just pull the trigger. And so I moved in. I was there for 2 weeks. And then I left, and I've been on the road for months. So
there's too much space. What do I do with these 3 rooms?
I know. I'm excited to get home too.
Yeah, sure.
But,
sure. So now Molly has her own room. Is that what they do?
Well, the way I look at it is...
Molly is the dog. Is your dog, by the way.
It's me, my girlfriend. My girlfriend's a dog too. So
okay.
me and my girlfriend, we have 2 dogs. And you know who the third roommate is? It's actually a young architect.
Okay.
It's my business. It's
all the young architect people taking all the boot camps.
It's the boot camp because I was running boot camp I was running the business out of her little apartment, and like it was just too small, and there's just too many things going on. So now I now have like a door that I could close.
Yeah.
And it doesn't slide and open onto the street either. So then when you're touring and you're in this van, this is like maybe a dumb question, but how do you shower and stuff?
Yeah, good question. That's legit.
Purell?
Yeah.
No. That can't be good for the body.
Well, in a pinch, I have a Planet Fitness membership.
Oh, amazing.
Right.
So is it still like $10 a month?
Yeah, it's super cheap. So it gives me a reason to go work out. I try to work out as much as I can. And while I'm there, why don't I just take a shower? Because of the boot camp, I'm running ARE boot camp on Sunday, Monday nights. People pay me a lot of money to take this program, so it's a little awkward when I'm in like the back of my car running ARE boot camp from the McDonald's parking lot in San Francisco, like I did last night. But no, so I try to jump in a hotel.
Okay.
When boot camp's happening.
Gotcha.
There's
But just because of the background?
Not even that, but it's also it's a good excuse. It's a good business expense too.
Right.
Let's jump into a hotel, use the Wi-Fi, take a shower.
Isn't it weird when you spend like so many hours in the van with just you and Molly, and then you meet a ton of students and people, and you chat for hours, and then you go back to your van and you're like alone again with the dog? Like, how do you transition from being in like such different social situation?
Yeah,
like,
because
isn't
it's a lot
it
of
weird?
driving, right?
Isn't it like kind of like waking up from a dream? Like, what just happened? You know?
Well, I think I'm not an introvert and I'm not an extrovert. I think I'm both. I have moments. I'm a Libra. I need to be balanced out. I'm a little bit of both worlds. And so I thrive on like being around lots of people and doing these presentations and talking a whole lot. But I also do need like my alone time. And on top of that, I got 2 women that work for me full time,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm pretty much constantly on the phone. I'm running the business as I'm driving across the country, and there's times where they'll crack open my emails and just help me get some emails turned around and move things along.
I mean, I suppose there's not. So you have the boot. I learned this today from your lecture. You have like 50 different things happening in your life, but there's like the boot camp and all the young architects, products, seminars, and etc. But I guess none of that, aside from the conference, which happens just one time a year, none of the other stuff though requires you to actually be in a physical location and have an office.
Exactly.
Do you see yourself like eventually trying to? Well, I guess you already answered, and that your apartment, one of the rooms is kind of dedicated to that. But I suppose if you're on the road and you have people to help you out while you're driving, you can just coordinate everything, as long as you have, I don't know, an iPhone.
Yeah.
Right.
Good support.
Yeah.
Good support system. In 2019, we did about 68 presentations with AIA chapters, with schools, with just other entrepreneurs, just talking in front of groups of people. That doesn't even include like all the boot camp meetings we do every week. But so I decided and there's a lot of driving and it really takes its toll on me. When I left for this trip, I'd like the flu for the first week. And here I am driving across the country, talking to AIA chapters. And I think we're going to actually kind of pare back. I was telling the group today at the presentation, like, I want to travel. I used to love to travel. And now I've traveled so much for the past 3 years. It's like, I think I need to just like chill out a little bit. So
are you able to like enjoy the trips when you go on these things? Like, do you have time to hang out and actually go to restaurants or go to the beach or whatever else? Or is it just constant on the move?
Little both. Yeah. For some days, like for the past couple of days, I've been go. But tomorrow, I got the next couple of days off, super low key, and we're just going to relax and chill and explore. And what's cool too about kind of all the stuff that I've created is I feel like my community is everywhere, all over the country. Whenever I do a presentation, boot campers show up, and it's so easy for me. I go to Facebook, I type in, friends who live in San Francisco, and then boom, oh my gosh, I didn't realize so-and-so lived here, So I'm really
like a rock star. Oh, you have all your groupies like, Mike's going to be in my city. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, right.
I got to work early. I got to go see him.
I wish.
That reminds me, actually, you said something very interesting in your presentation today, and, I don't want to divulge everything, but one specific I think point on one of your slides was that you were talking about like the things that are important to you. And I believe the first one, let's say the first one was like making money or something. And the second one was recognition. And I actually thought that was an extremely honest thing to say. And recognition in that, if you do something for someone or you put out a product that people like it, you want recognition for it. You want to be liked for it, loved for it. You want people to care. You want people to, I don't know, spread the word and things like this. But I thought that was a really honest thing to say, because I feel like maybe saying out loud that it is important for me to be recognized for what I do and I need that is not, maybe a lot of architects wouldn't say that out loud because it seems like too self-centered. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But it just occurred to me when you said that, like, that's a very honest thing. And it's true. I mean, I feel the same way about that specific issue, and I think a lot of people feel that way, but they're afraid to say it. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that happens a lot is my community, the boot campers and the people in the Facebook group. I get a lot of people coming at me saying, thank you, Michael Riscica, for this infrastructure, for this Facebook, or for this boot camp, whatever, this thing that you wrote. And if it wasn't for this thing, I couldn't have figured it out. And that hit me really hard a long time ago. And in some ways, like, that's really important to me. And we were talking earlier today about like where do I get all my energy from? In some ways, that's really it too. Is just the recognition, and, seeing that the work that I'm doing is having an impact. Yeah, it's been super important to me.
Yeah, that and drugs, right?
Yeah, I love it.
But I think your response to that question was also really, really amazing. You said, you do things that energize you. That's the key, right? Yeah. Is that you don't partake in activities and you don't go after stuff that doesn't give you energy. And if you don't do that, then you always have energy. And it makes total sense. Yeah. So you're on the road traveling a bunch, and you're going to cut back a bit. And one of the things that we wanted to talk about for sure was the Young Architect Conference, right? So you were, the past one in 2019 happened in Portland, Oregon. and you traveled out there. It was during the summer, right?
Yeah.
You
August.
were there for the conference. So give us a brief overview as to what the conference is.
Yeah. So I have attended a freaking billion AIA state conferences, national conferences, CSI conferences, even student conferences. And let me tell you my big takeaway is that architecture conferences really aren't for architects. It's really become, in some ways, almost more of a horse and pony show for the product rep industry.
Mm-hmm.
And the CEUs are another thing. Everyone's, got to get these CEUs done. And I just feel like I watch so much, energy get put into, acknowledging the previous generation, all these old people, giving them all these awards and medals. And I've just been to so many conferences, and it's always like a bunch of young people hanging out, being like trying to find each other, just flailing around. Yeah. And for years, I've been saying, wouldn't it be amazing if we had a conference focused on the next generation? And really, instead of hearing from, star architects, why don't we hear speakers from cool young people who are actually making it happen and really having an impact? And, and then rather than having everyone's so obsessed with the CEUs, people who aren't licensed don't care about CEUs. So why don't we focus on professional development and throw the whole CEU thing out the window and, not let that dictate how our workshops go. Mm-hmm. And then what if we had great parties at night? And so I talked about this for years and years. And then after the AIA conference in New York City, I said, fuck it, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. And at that point we had 14 months from when I officially pulled the trigger on it to actually the first conference. And that was a big part of why I traveled so much in 2019, is I wanted to tell everyone around America, we're having a young architect conference, and so it was I went out to Portland. I was there for all summer long. I visited every firm. I told every firm, I said, we're having a young architect conference for the next generation. And one of the hardest challenges I had with the first conference was I'd never done this before. There was no precedent. Everyone looked at me like, that's great, Mike, whatever. And so I ended up, believe it or not, most of the people at the conference did not come from Portland. We had about really? 180 people flying from all over the country. Wow. A lot of New York, a lot of Texas, some California. People came from all over the United States for this conference, and very few actually were local. And me and my team had worked really hard prior to the conference. We'd set up great speakers, great workshops, great parties. The entire infrastructure, an amazing venue. The entire infrastructure was completely dialed in. But the real beauty and the magic of this conference was when I brought all these people from all over the country who are really serious about their careers and taking things to the next level. Once the group got together, just the networking and the magic between the synergy between all of these people was just really fantastic. And it was 180 people. It was kind of an intimate, smaller conference. And someone said, they said at the end of the conference, I think I got to have a conversation with every single person here over the past couple of days. Right. And everyone got to know each other really well. We had a lot of great conversations. We have a private Facebook group just for people that were at the conference. But after the conference was over, everyone went back super inspired and invigorated. And a lot of people made a lot of bold moves with, stepping up their game and with their exams or with getting a new job or, asking for what they really want or starting new projects. And it was really inspiring.
So how many days was the conference?
It was Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Okay.
And
there's presentations during the day and I don't know, seminars.
Yeah, it's keynotes in the morning. Mm-hmm. So we do a couple of keynotes in the morning. We have workshops in the afternoon and then parties at night. And there's a lot of interstitial space for people to go out to lunch with each other and hang out. And that was one of the things we really pushed hard is we said, listen, connect with as many people as you can at this conference and build solid connections.
So what kind of keynotes, were presented at the conference? Yeah,
so we had my buddy Juan Dile. He came over from Durban, South Africa.
He's a good speaker. Yeah. I saw him he's in the clip, right? Yeah. Very good speaker.
Yeah. He's got this nonprofit that's been building housing projects and all over Africa. He's doing all this cool stuff. I met him when he was still in architecture school at a student conference. And him and I have kept in touch. I've had him on my podcast, and he was just a really inspiring, energetic guy. And so he gave a fantastic chat. My friend Ashley, she lives in Orange County. She's actually she's a doctor. She's a pharmacist. But her niche and what she's always been really good at is helping people kind of own their brand. And so she kind of spoke about, asking for more money and, being really owning yourself and having confidence and stuff like that. My buddy Alyssa from, she lives in Silicon Valley. She spoke about, she told her story about, getting to where she's at and how it's not a straight line. Do you hear the good fucking design advice?
This sounds familiar.
Okay. They have a brand where they give really solid design advice, but they just use the F word over and over and over again. And so one of the guys from the GFDA kind of talked about...
GFDA. It sounds like so Ivy League when you said that.
You got to look it up, man. You love it. Yeah.
I'll look it up.
You got to look it up. He talked about, like building his brand and giving, great design advice and what that whole thing looked like. I talked about building a stronger profession. My buddy Drew Paul Bell talked about, kind of helping figuring out and navigating his career and all this. So the keynotes were really solid. It was a lot of fun. They were about 30 minutes long each. And then after that, we had great workshops. So I did the lecture I did today, the Entrepreneurship for Young Architects lecture. We had one about public speaking in architecture, networking, building your brand, kind of owning this, what are you trying to create? How do you get clarity around what your message is?
Right.
One of the guys from my buddy Christian from Perkins and Will, he's a fantastic renderer. And he's got this workflow that, this methodology as to how he does his renderings and lays things out. He explained that. We had someone talking about, my buddy Ann did the Project Management 101, kind of talking about her experiences, stepping into project management. What does that look like? Talked about the architect exam. Well, this was an interesting one. I wanted you guys to participate in this. We need to have a chat offline about getting you at the next conference.
Sure.
Yeah,
We're gonna talk about that.
Only if I can wear a cape.
Yeah.
I want to wear a cape when I'm on stage.
I'll hold you to it.
And a
I will.
Speedo?
It'll be
Yeah.
Speedo and a cape.
Yeah.
No, I
I
won't
can't
get
do it on a
invited
Speedo.
back. I'll be reported to the
I will
local
get invited
police.
back.
But I wanted to have a conversation about how do we create more content creators? How do we create more bloggers, more podcasters, more video bloggers, and more writers? How does the next generation of architects have a louder voice? Because if we don't speak up and start really, driving the narrative, someone else is going to do it for us. And so, I had a bunch of bloggers and podcasters, and we all got up on stage and we just kind of talked about, what is content and what's our methodology. We took a lot of questions, and it was a huge success because after that was over, boom, there were like 10 new blogs and podcasts, and it really kind of lit the fire under a lot of people's butts with, I got to start this project. I got to stop waiting till everything's perfect. Let's just get this thing out the door. And a lot of people really started creating content.
Right. That's a really interesting point, though, that the question or the discussion, the topic of how do we create more content creators? Because if we don't, then someone else might dictate what the voices of our generation.
Yeah.
And that makes total sense. I feel like sometimes because, we're all socially connected through social media, Instagram, and also internet podcasts and stuff, that we just assume that therefore the voice is going to be there. But actually that's not true, right? You need content creators to shape that voice, to be the voice. Without it, then it doesn't exist. And I also kind of agree with like when I hear you talk, I feel like you also sense there's a pretty big difference between, let's say, the future generation of architects in the next like 10 years or so versus the current/past. Like you seem to see them as pretty different things, right?
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's also very interesting. I think it's true. And in a way, because of podcasts and other things like this and what you're doing with blogs and everything else, there's like much more transparency now than before, for sure. But I think you're right that it does take, someone to step forward to say the things. Otherwise, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Well, and sometimes you have people who want to do things. It just needs kind of the kick in the butt and be like, hey, just go do it, right?
Yeah.
They need to hear it from somebody else. So that's great.
Yeah.
It happens.
So that conference sounds amazing. I want to ask you, though, like you had been thinking about this for a while, or you had the idea that someone should do a conference. At what point did you kind of realize like it's gonna have to be me? Was it like how was that feeling?
I feel like this is a big part of everything that's Young Architect, is me being dissatisfied with the status quo and saying, why are they doing it this way? Why doesn't somebody do it this way? And then me just stepping up, say, all right, I'm going to do it this way. You know? Yeah, I don't know. It was just, I think I needed to attend a lot of crappy conferences. It was a
Until
process.
you just got so
I had
fed
to
up.
keep going with it. I hadn't been to enough crappy conferences, and then New York was the tipping point.
Right.
You know, it was like, you guys came to, remember I had to do that giant young architect party? You guys were there.
Yeah,
You popped in.
that's right.
Yeah, that's right.
That was like one of the best. Yeah, I said to Joanna, who works for me, I said, Joanna, every year I go to the same crappy closing party. It's, you know, $70. It's a, you know, 2 drink tickets and a rubber chicken dinner. And I said, I don't want to go this year. We're going to have our own party. And so I found some, you know, tiny little bar in the Hell's Kitchen.
Great. Yeah.
And I walked in, I said, hey, can I throw a party here? It's probably going to be like, I don't know, 70 or 100 people. And they're like, yeah, sure, whatever, no problem. And then DJ Questlove was supposed to play. And I don't think he was ever even booked, but at the last minute they swapped him out with En Vogue from 1992. And I had this little Eventbrite, and all of a sudden the Eventbrite for the Young Architect Party just went through the roof, and like
Really?
700 people signed up. There was like a line down the block and around the corner.
It was packed.
It was
It was
packed.
super
Yeah, it was
packed.
packed. It was just bodies.
I
and
was so
bodies.
confused when I got there. I'm like, wait, what's happening right now?
And that conference was such a disaster. I had so many people come to me like, Mike, your party was the highlight of the
Right.
entire
I bet.
AI New York conference. But
Right.
yeah.
So you're doing a new conference this year, right?
Yeah, we're going to do it in Portland, Maine.
So wait, so how did you pick up like Portland, Oregon, Portland, Maine? Was that like a joke?
Yeah, kind
Kind
of. Yeah. It all started, well, I always had this vision that, you know, Portland, Oregon's an amazing city for a conference. So let's have the Young Architect Conference there. And it was always kind of locked in. And then we did it. It was the first conference was amazing. And Portland's great. But you know what? No one in Portland actually showed up. You know, like no one was interested. And so I was like, well, my boss, you know, I called Joanna. She works for me. I call her my boss. Even though yeah, she's the adult in the room. She's the adult in this business. But, you know, Joanna said, she's like, let's do it in Portland, Maine. Portland to Portland, ha, ha, ha. And it started as a joke. And then she found a really nice venue.
Oh, nice.
And then she's like, you know what? This might actually work. She found a really nice venue across the street from one of the best breweries in town. And totally, it's all, you know, it almost didn't make sense not to do it in Portland, Maine.
Gotcha.
And so I said, Portland to Portland, let's just move it, you know?
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah, West Coast, East Coast. So the planning for the first one, though, you made the announcement or something like that, right? And you said you had basically 14 months between that time and the conference. How much did you have figured out before that 14-month countdown started?
Yeah. I had hired a company to help me kind of wrap my heads around this because I'd never hosted a conference before. And it was really intimidating to me. And so we hired a really great company and that's what they do. They do events, and they held me and Joanna's hand they found the venue, and they helped a lot of the AV and the logistics and stuff with that, kind of helped figure it out. But the hardest part of the first Young Architect Conference, and it was, you know, my biggest struggle was just selling tickets. And the hardest part was I've never done this before. So I'm telling people about my ideas. And I always say there was 3 groups that came together. It was my friends, it was the ARI Boot Camp, and it was the ARI Facebook group. All these people are like, all right, Mike's doing this thing. We're going to support it. You know, we're going on a long shot. Let's show up in Portland. And it was magical. And since then, you know, selling tickets for the second conference has been a hell of a lot easier than it was for the first. But I would say it slowly got dialed in. The closer we got to the conference, the faster things were getting dialed in. I work in a kind of a very organic way. I'm reluctant to pick all the speakers and dial in all the workshops too soon in advance because I travel the country and I'm talking to people and, you know, things happen. And so I would say, it's slowly I guess it's kind of like a design project, you know. The closer you get to you figure out kind of your concept, and then it's more about kind of finessing it, and the closer you get to final presentation. But
that's amazing. I mean, that's such a bold move because, I mean, especially if that's not what you do, if you don't do conferences professionally, it's the first one. I mean, that's a huge amount of responsibility. And then also, I would imagine that, like you say, convincing people to come to this new thing when maybe they haven't heard of you before, that's a big task to undertake, you know. And I also want to point out that, you know, you showed us a short video today of the conference, the 2019 conference. It's like a legit conference. It's not, I think some people maybe are apprehensive also because when they hear that this Mike Riscica, young architect person. I've heard of him like peripherally, sort of. He's doing a conference, or like, is this going to be like super ghetto? Like, it's gonna be like 5 people in a room talking to each other. Yeah. But 180 people is not the biggest turnout, but it's like legit. That's still a lot of people to show up and fly in. And the presenters had audio headsets. The audio was clear. The visuals were clear. There was a good video. Like, it was legitimate. It was very well done.
Yeah, thank you.
Did you manage to get some kind of partnership with, I don't know, organization to kind of support and encourage and spread the word outside of your own community in a way?
Yeah, that was one of the things that I had really strong feelings about from the very beginning. Was the way the conference climate right now is the product reps. They throw tons and tons of money, and whoever can donate the most money to the conference gets to the most attention. And I said, I don't want products involved. I don't want product reps looking at this conference as it is. I get so many people, even today, some guy that design builder, he does kitchens or something, and he wants to be on the Young Architect podcast, and he wants me to use my platform so he can tell everyone about how great he is. And I said, I already get so many people coming at me with some agenda. I said, I don't want, the product company. So if we're going to have sponsors, I want them to be aligned with, kind of what we're doing. And so who are our sponsors? We had Amber Book, Michael Ehrman, Amber Book.
Yeah. Very
sponsored
good.
Us. One of the AIA chapters, I think, got involved. Yeah, got involved. There's a company called Design Arts Seminar who does continuing education credits. They got involved. There's another architecture conference, the CSI National Conference, called the Construct Show. I speak every year at their event, the CSI conference, and they sponsored my conference on top of that. And
cool.
So yeah, it's kind of really, and this year we're pushing a lot harder for other sponsorships.
Still nothing with NCARB though.
What do you say?
Still nothing with NCARB.
Well, what's kind of funny is actually NCARB sent me an email before the conference, and they said, Mike, we like what you're doing. We think it's fantastic. We want to support you, but we just want to, they said, can we attend your conference? We just want to see what's going on. And I said, yeah, I don't care. You guys can come. And so actually, Harry and Jeremy from NCARB came to the conference, and they just participated and just saw what was happening. And they're cool guys. Yeah, it was super cool.
Who are Harry and Jerry?
Harry and Jeremy. They're just two. They're two NCARBs. PR people that travel the country. Yeah.
Gotcha. I don't know these people.
Yeah.
Have you found, generally speaking, that with all of your different endeavors, that the more established architecture and design organizations are receptive to what you're doing, or does it take some time, before they start to take you seriously, before they believe that what you have is quality? Like, how difficult is that sales pitch typically?
Yeah. One of the things I've really kind of changed about my style is I've stopped asking for permission, and I've stopped sales pitching all these people. And when I'm doing a tour, I reach out and I say, hey, listen, I'm going to be traveling through your city at this time. If you want to work with me and set up a lecture, I don't charge a lot of money. And if you want to charge for my lecture, you can make your money back, But if you want to work with me, we'll do it and we'll work together. And if not, no worries. And so most of the time, the AIA chapters jump all over it. They go, Mike, we'd love it. We would love to bring you in and set up a presentation. We can fill a room with people. And what I've also learned is that when my reach is often even farther than the AIA's reach. Just when I announce, people, many times I've been told, Mike, we have never had this many people at an event before. We didn't even know this many people existed who were studying for their exams. And so that's been huge. But if it's not a win-win for both sides, then I just walk away. Yeah. And if they want to work with me, awesome. If they don't, I'm not going to ask for permission. I'm not going to chase them down.
Yeah. I mean, I ask because I think for us, we've spoken with some different organizations, and sometimes it works, a lot of times it doesn't. I think that's just the nature of the game anyway. But I've sometimes wondered if the difficulty we have, or when negotiations don't work out, or there's just a total lack of interest, if it's partially because there's a generation gap. Because for the most part, the people that are running a lot of the organizations are the old guard. They're from a much older generation. I mean, this is my hypothesis. I could be completely wrong, but I feel like they're completely out of touch with what the younger generation of designers and architects are thinking and talking about, and what matters to them. And so when something doesn't work out, I'm like, but do you realize like the potential of not just our show, but like, this platform period? Like, I don't think you fully understand like what capital P podcasting is even outside of architecture. Like, do you understand how big this could be, or a blog, or whatever it might, whatever else? And so that's why I ask, because it seems like sometimes that they don't get it. It's not their thing. They don't need to understand it. And so it's like, yeah, no, not for us. We're just going to continue with whatever else we're doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. One of the things I've always wanted to do, I mean, like I said earlier, it gets back to me being dissatisfied with the status quo.
Sure.
And let me create a platform where I can just do my own thing. Let me create a conference where I can do whatever I want. And I don't have to follow the guidelines of what the AI does at their conferences and all the other things, And so it just kind of gets back to, let's just do it and not ask for permission.
So what things are you going to continue from the first conference to the next, and what things are you going to like change? And what things did you see like that didn't work out? We're going to have to switch things up.
Yeah,
music wasn't great last time.
Yeah,
or a particular presenter.
That was actually one of the comments we got.
Oh, really?
I hired this really cool DJ that I love in Portland. He just plays all these cool beats and super cool. But we had a total bonehead thing I didn't even realize is we have a really big Hispanic community. And all these people kept telling the DJ, like, yo, can you play some like salsa music? And he's like, yo, I don't play that. And so that was like, so we're gonna get a better DJ, and he's gonna he's gonna have some salsa music for everyone.
But Hispanic community not in Portland. You mean amongst the
just
architecture?
the whole young architect?
Really?
Huh.
I would say probably 65% of boot campers
No kidding.
speak English as a second language.
That's amazing. And a lot of those people are Hispanic in descent.
A lot, yeah.
That's interesting. I would not guess that.
Yeah.
That is very interesting.
I don't know what that means, but yeah.
80% of the boot camp is women.
Really?
My theory, that makes sense. And I think
women got their shit together. They just want to get it done.
Yeah,
right?
because
and
they're organized.
Do it.
There's no ego involved. Guys are like, I don't need any help. I don't need a boot camp. I'm my own boot camp. And then like 6 months later, like, that's not working. So different music, right? Salsa.
No, we did. We had a party. That was another thing. Is at the other conferences, you see all these old people walking around with medals on. And I said, you know what? I want all the recently graduated and the recently licensed people to be wearing medals at my conference. And so we had all these, I gave, these kind of cheesy plastic gold medals. And it was a huge success. It was a huge hit. And I said, you know what? I'm taking it to the next level. I got online and I found this company that actually makes, medals for half marathons. And I said, I want a really shiny gold medal with the Young Architect logo on it. And on the backside, I want to say licensed architect. So I just got these beautiful medals made. I heard like 1,000 of them. And so the people who were part of the conference who recently got licensed, I'm going to put a gold medal on them. And
that's
then my
awesome.
boot campers, all the boot campers who had finished their exams, if they're not at the conference, we're gonna get them a gold medal after conference is over.
I love it.
Yeah. So the medal thing went off on a huge hitch. That was a huge success. And then we did awards. I just there were so many people that were at that conference who were just doing, they're like they're helping other people, they're being of service, they're volunteering, they're doing stuff, they're not looking to be recognized. I see them doing, being, upstanding citizens in the community, but they're not looking to be recognized. And so I just started picking off some people. I said, we're going to give these people awards. We're going to give them a huge award. And so we had these big Young Architect awards. That was a huge hit. What else? We did a pub crawl. We had a great historian who was, moving us around town, telling us about the history of architecture. Yeah, that was a good success. Things we're not going to do again. We screwed up our badges. The badges were just like garbage this year. So I'm taking control of that. We're gonna, high design, really,
What was wrong with the badges?
They were just made out of some crappy material. They were falling apart before the conference was over.
Oh.
Yeah, that was a huge failure. But at the end of the day, out of all there was so many moving parts. If the badges were the worst of it, we're like, That's awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's really funny that you made your own awards, but it's totally.
I think that's great.
It makes total sense. Like we were talking to a dean of a university on this podcast, and I forget the specific conversation. I think it was about how in this conversation it was about architectural designers who are not licensed but do great work deserve some kind of certificate. And I jokingly but somewhat serious, I was like, we just fucking print one out, just make one.
Yeah.
And just do it. I don't know. I suppose the AIA would have to get involved somehow, but just do it. And I have this philosophy that if you do it, then it's legitimate, then it's real. So, the gold medals you gave out, if that first they were plastic and it was kind of fun but also serious, like if it happens, it exists. It's a real thing. You got an award.
Yeah, and
it means something to people.
And sometimes it doesn't need to be from like a big organization that doesn't even know you exist, right? If it's someone that knows what's your value, what you're capable of doing, and that recognize that, I mean, that's more actually.
I mean, all awards start somehow somewhere, so why not just start on your own?
No, that's
totally
great.
And one of the things I've been yelling about for years and years and years, I think one of the worst things the profession really does is, I think it really shoots ourselves in the foot, is not acknowledging the sacrifice and the commitment you have made to become a licensed architect. You've spent a fortune on architecture school and years of working, and it's not an easy degree to get. And then you work through all these tests and the time that you spend studying and working on through this process. And then when I got my license, my boss gave me a handshake, said congratulations, and that was it. And the AIA said, okay, congratulations, now you can start paying us a lot more money.
Yeah.
And there was really no congratulations. No one really acknowledged it. It was a big nothing burger. And in some ways, like I've always been saying for years and years, it's the profession. It's an amazing opportunity for everyone to come together and say, thank you for your sacrifices that you've made to get here, and welcome to the profession. And we're the AIA, and thank you for making these sacrifices, and we're here to help. The impact that would have would be huge.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, it does not happen. Some places around America do it, but generally speaking, no. And, I want to change that culture, and I want, that's why I want to give shiny gold medals to everyone who had made that sacrifice.
I mean, it's
when you get licensed, I mean, it is a diploma in a way, right? So when you graduate from school, you get a ceremony, you wear a scarf or robe, a cape or whatever, right? Your family is there, like there is a ceremony about it. Once you get licensed, like nothing happens. You get it in the mail and that's it. Like there is no special moment to, remember. So
yeah, I mean, I think there's a pomp and circumstance aspect. Pomp and what is it? Pomp and whatever. Pomp and circumstance. That's not what it is. The P and the C's. There's that aspect, but also, there's just the more sincere way of saying what you said, which is, thank you, congratulations, you did a lot of hard work, it'll pay off, welcome, et cetera, et cetera. And it's kind of funny because I suppose in some ways, because architects are pretty hardcore people, and we go through really brutal critiques, that you would think that kind of verbiage wouldn't mean anything, but man, it means a lot, right? It means a lot, and it's kind of like, why don't we just say that? There's not really any reason why we don't.
Yeah.
Why aren't we a little more loving? Honestly.
Yeah, people are shy.
Yeah.
That's funny coming from me, who just like rips on everyone. That's funny. So the next conference is happening also during the summer?
Yeah. Portland, Maine, July 24th, 25th, 26th, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We're going to do an optional day of service. We're going to have all these young people out in Portland, Maine. We're going to volunteer for a bunch of the local organizations, work with the homeless, try to, maybe help some build a house or something. We're kind of working through what that looks like. But if people want to hang out for Monday, we're going to go volunteer somewhere.
Cool. And would you say that the attendantship is that right? My words are all over the place. Attendantship? Attendees? The attendees?
Yeah.
The people who come to the conference, right? Is the conference geared mostly toward like people who are still in school, people who are before license, after license? Like what's the range?
That's how we think about it, is when we pick all the speakers, the workshops, students, people, either students, people who are studying, maybe have graduated but are mid-career, and then licensed architects. And we try to have, workshops and stuff for all different groups of people. That doesn't mean that anyone's locked into a certain track, but that's kind of how we try to appeal to everyone.
Right.
The word young architect, well, this is what freaks a lot of people out too. They're like, a lot of people are like, well, I'm not young. And I go, how old are you?
Right.
And they go, well, I'm 38 or something. I'm like, well, I'm 40 and I'm the young architect guy, But, it really means, the first 10 years after getting licensed. And age actually has nothing to do with it. And so, a lot of people are like, well, I'm not a young architect. Can I still come to your conference? Well, I'm like, well...
We don't check
not with that attitude.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure if it's for you. but I'd say probably the average age of the first one was, I don't know, like 32.
Okay.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah,
that makes
35.
sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the 10-year, after license, that range from like 25 or 24 maybe all the way to like 35 or 40. It's all kind of, there's a lot of shared problems that people have, across the board. And, we had attended actually an architecture marketing conference one time, which we can talk about probably off the record, but we attended it. And the thing that was interesting to us, because at that point we didn't have a practice and we were thinking about starting one, and we thought, well, this could be interesting to see. And the conference was really for people who already had a practice. So we didn't really belong in a lot of ways. The content was still interesting, but it was fascinating to see that you had these partners of offices, these founders of offices that had been around for 20 years, and they were still super young. And in this case, not necessarily, well, both in a good way in that they were thirsty for something more, hence them being there, but also a really bad way in that they were totally underdeveloped in a lot of aspects, in terms of like marketing, making money, and all that, getting clients and all that kind of stuff. So, the idea of being young, it's green, right? And it was surprised. One of the takeaways was like, wow, this is a room of 100 people.
It was weird because
the average age is like 60, and they don't know what the fuck they're doing.
Like our parents' age or like our boss's age, and we're like, what are you guys doing here? Don't you know, how you should be operating and like how things work by now? But no, I guess because they probably went to all of those conferences where they just sell your products.
Do you think they got stuck in the past? They got stuck in a moment in time and they didn't evolve?
It was pretty clear that there was a gap between how things are working now and how things were working for them when they started. Mm-hmm. And I guess there's, they stepped out of that circle and kind of lost touch with how to use those things.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So there's definitely a gap.
I think that was definitely part of it. I think also a lot of them had I feel like most people, when they start a design office or an architecture office, it's not a necessarily big, grand plan, a big scheme. It kind of happens organically, which is totally fine. And they kind of like softly roll into it. So they work at nights for so-and-so, and then there's enough work coming in, so they go off on their own. And it just kind of happens, right? Mm-hmm. And then following that story, like 10 years later, that's a reminder to do social media, which I never do. And then 10 years later, they're doing the same practices they did at the very beginning. And they realize, like, I'm not getting paid enough, and I'm actually operating like a person who's owned a business for 1 year, but I've been doing it for 20. And so I think a lot of the practices and habits just get grandfathered in. And I think that's a big problem too. And surprisingly, a lot of them, we know a lot of sole proprietors, and it's difficult to make a living. You have kids, you have bills to pay. You can't be picky about your clients. I totally get that narrative, 100%. But there are a lot of people there who had like really successful businesses. It's like you have the cash flow, and the faculty, you could actually take some time to think about this, but they just hadn't done it, even though they had been well developed for 5 years or 10 years or whatever.
But the common thing that was, there in the room with those older generation and us was that thirst for learning how to do things, how to do it better, how to understand things that, we might not think of. So that seems to be like the commonalities between us and them, which was interesting because then it really doesn't matter how old you are, right? It's really about personality and your interest.
Yeah.
So this is a big picture. Is the Young Architects, brand mission, is it going to evolve when you get older? Like when you're 60, is it going to be like, the middle-aged architects and then you're going to tackle other issues?
Yeah. I already own oldarchitect.com.
Do you really? That's amazing.
And I think if you go to it, it just points straight to Bob Borson's face. I always like to pick on Bob, but yeah.
His face.
Yeah, I think it sends you right to his bio or something like that. But yeah, yeah, I don't know. I just turned 40, and I remember when I was in my early 20s making fun of my friend's brother because he just turned 30, and be like, "You're so old," and I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen. Like I said, I told you guys in my presentation today. You know, I've had my license for 6 years. 6 years ago, I could have never dreamed. I could have never even dreamed or thought any of this shit would have ever happened. Yeah. So I feel like I've just been kind of riding the wave and just seeing where it takes me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good move.
Yeah.
It seems to be working out so far.
Yeah.
I mean, that and a crazy work ethic.
Yeah. I like to work. I didn't pursue architecture so I could just, you know, clock in and clock out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah. It's been fun. But yeah, just, you know, I'm having a great time. And I think that's the most important thing is I need to stay aligned, and you know, I need to enjoy the work that I'm doing, and as long as that's happening, I'm loving it.
Do you miss doing architecture, you know, producing sets, working with clients, any of that stuff?
Not really. I miss, you know, I worked in architecture offices for so long, doing documents and kind of working behind the scenes, supporting my boss, making my boss look good in front of clients and stuff like that. And it was a great first chapter of my career. And, you know, I became an amazing architecture technician. And it was when I switched over. I worked for small firms my whole career, and then I went over to the city of Portland, Oregon, and I started being the owner's rep and managing projects. And it was when I started to really work with people more, I realized my skills are better. I'm better at working with people than I am at drawing all the lines and doing all the technical aspects of it. And that's what I'm seeing with Young Architect. You know, I got my license. I thought I was going to start an architecture firm. I thought I was going to have the best firm. I was going to do all this fancy work. And that was always the vision and the goal. Mm-hmm. And then as a young architect just got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, I started to realize that my value, and I think I'm better at it, is actually working with people. I always say, I'm an architect, but rather than working on buildings, I'm rebuilding the entire profession of architecture. And my focus is to build a better professional so they can, you know, be more successful. And I'm just seeing that I'm better and I'm more fulfilled and I'm making more money than I ever would have if I would have stayed working on the building projects.
Right.
And it was a weird transition for me because it was in 2017. I was doing all these house projects. I was fighting with building inspectors and, you know, clients. You know, I was working on all these working on the silly stuff and in retrospect. And then one day I was just like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? Like, I'm helping, you know, one client at a time when I could be focusing this energy on helping an entire generation. Mm-hmm. Like, and you know what? I'm better at the young architect stuff than I am at, being an architect. Right. And so it was a hard transition for me, and it was something I really resisted for a really long time.
Because
I don't know. There was just years of me. I was always going to be the architect. I was going to be the guy that did all the drawings. I was going to chase after clients. I was going to, say that's my building. And then I just started to realize that I could have a bigger impact if I let that idea go and ran with this, and kept pushing it harder and harder and harder. And after I, made that, it was actually, and a big part of that was leaving Portland, Oregon. I had been in Portland for about 10 years, and I had changed a lot. The city had changed, and it was like, I think I'm going to leave Portland. I think I'm going to get out of Oregon. I think I'm going to really take Young Architect more seriously than I ever have, and focus all of my energy full time on that. And once I made that decision, it just exploded, got even bigger, and just kept going. So,
do you get the same? I'm curious. Like, there's a certain kind of satisfaction and buzz, almost, and a high you get from designing something, a building or an abstract project or whatever. But once you left the architecture profession and you didn't have that kind of the excitement from that activity, was it kind of replaced by basically designing the young architects, I don't know what you call business, I suppose, right?
Yeah, I would say I still get that. And I'm still going through design. I'm solving problems. Right. I'm designing stuff constantly and using my skills as an architect. It's just not buildings.
Right.
I'm designing courses and conferences and, other things. And But yeah.
I'm glad, man. I mean, it's a beautiful thing, and I think all of us are pretty lucky to have you around at this point in time. I mean, it's a funny thing. Like we were talking the other day about our podcast, and really big picture, theoretical almost stuff. But I think we're looking at the timeline of architects in our generation, maybe a generation before and a generation after, to see like who's going to matter. And of course, you have the big name architects who do big giant projects and things like this, and maybe some major academics. But I think in addition to that, in the profession, there's got to be in that timeline, right, a blip that includes like Mike Riscica in there. I'm serious. And maybe you're at the beginning of the blip and it'll spike higher in the next few years. But I think that your existence and what you're doing could have a major impact, and I think is on its way, or if maybe it's already there. So I'm serious when I say like we're lucky that someone like you is around to undertake this this problem to solve. Because for sure it's a problem, and for sure it takes a lot of effort to try and do it, and it for sure would require someone to do it full time.
Yeah,
So
and I think what you do really well too is really like addressing the community, right, and bring the architect back to be a community, because a lot of those organizations, they focus on very like specific things, but no one really thinks about bringing people together, having people help out each other. And that's, I think, probably my biggest takeaway from like participating in your boot camp for the exam, is realizing that there is a chunk of people in the same situation, that they're accessible, that you can reach out, that you're not isolated. And I think no one else really in the architecture world does it the way you do. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you both.
So should we end it there? No, I'm just kidding.
That was good, right?
So I want to talk about that. But do you see the conference also as a way to step beyond or further than just the whole licensing issue?
Oh, I was going to ask that.
Oh, really? So like taking the AREs and passing the AREs and getting licensed is a huge undertaking for sure. And there's a huge support system that you've built for it. But, it occurred to me that, first of all, not everyone's going to try and get licensed. And then secondly, a lot of people, when they get licensed, and they don't think about the exams ever again. And I wonder if like the conference for you is like a way to take all the great things you're doing and the great mindset you have and apply it to even a bigger audience.
Yeah.
To a group of people who is not just totally focused on the exams. Do you know?
Yeah, I think that's already happening. Yeah. And the exams, the ARE is really my bread and butter and the biggest body of work. I would say at the Young Architect Conference, it was really just a small piece of it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. And so if there were some people studying, but I'd say probably most of them weren't. We did a couple of workshops. Michael Ehrman's going to be there this year doing a workshop, and Lorenzo and a bunch of other people. So if, you want to go study with them, that's cool. But I would say 85-90% of the conference was really not about licensing or anything. One of the things too, you guys kind of reminded me of, is one of the things that I really talked a lot about at the first Young Architect Conference is kind of the competition that comes with architecture. I think we are trained in school to constantly be looking at, our work and everyone else's work and comparing side by side, and I was one of the most competitive people in architecture school. I really was. I was constantly, beating myself up, trying to work harder and outwork everyone else and this and that. And one of the things that I really hammered on is some ways putting that behind and stepping away from that and really looking at, our careers, the projects we work on, and really kind of thinking about it is if one of us can be successful, all of us can be successful. And that's one of the things I've always kind of brought to the forefront in a lot of the projects I work on, because while yes, I sell my own study materials, I don't just promote only my study materials. I actually endorse all the other providers and people who are doing cool stuff. It's not just if they can be successful at it, I could be as well. And even like with other podcasts, I don't look at other podcasters or bloggers as like competition. I don't think like the Midnight Charette, I want people to follow me, not them, I really believe like we're all in this together. And when we can work together and really support each other, it really goes a long way. And that was a big part of the message that I tried to convey at the first conference. And I really try to bring that into a lot of the work. I've had other bloggers from other generations who've looked at me as competition, and they don't want to like be friendly with me because they've got their followers and I have mine and this and that and blah blah blah. And the way I see it is, the people who all of us are going to resonate with certain groups of people, and you guys are going to have your audience, I'll have mine, this and that, and there's no reason why we shouldn't be sharing the wealth back and forth. And I've always tried to bring that into a lot of the things that I do. So
but when did that mindset start to become more solidified? And so when did the transition from the more competitive thinking in school, when did it start to switch over to this more inclusive one?
It was around when I started Young Architect. And I had so many people that I looked up to and admired for what they had done, and I had wanted to have my own platform. And I had this vision of what Young Architect could be, and it was always like, I can't do it by myself, and I want to pull other people. I want other people to be a part of this thing as well, and I want to use my resources and help lift them up, and I want them to feel the same way about me. And that attitude wasn't always reciprocated. Sure. And the more it wasn't reciprocated, the more I started thinking about it. Is I want to, if one of us could be successful, there's no reason why all of us couldn't. And so I've always been trying to like be super supportive of other people who are even in the same space that I am. Maybe they might be selling like what is it? Architect Exam Prep, Hyperfine, Amber Book, all the other publishers. I endorse all of them. If they've got a quality product, I really endorse it and try to lift everyone up, because I think it does the profession a disservice when I say, oh, don't pay attention to that guy, that's my competition or whatever. And as long as everyone's, as long as they're feeding the community, it's not just about me. My role in all this is to support the community. It's not to be the center of attention. And while, yes, I am the center of attention pretty often, but it's really to create an infrastructure and to have things live on beyond me being the center of it. So,
yeah, I mean, that makes total sense, that message and that mindset. And I've always wondered, I mean, for me internally, I'm conflicted always between being competitive, which I think is a good edge to have, and then having this other mindset that you're describing. And I've always wondered, like, because I feel like you hear this, of course, from people who are already successful. And let's say, for example, like you are for sure categorically successful. And so I feel like from a listener's perspective, it's like, well, that's easy to say when you're Mike Riscica and you have the Young Architect and you have all these things going and you've worked hard to get here, of course. But it's easy to say when you're at the top and that you are having a lot of success. I mean, do you think that you would have maintained this mindset if you weren't able to be successful? That's a more that's a more philosophical kind of question, I suppose. But it's something that I wonder.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know how I'd answer it. Probably not. I don't know.
I mean, it's human nature to be to be wary of someone when they're in the same space as you. I think it's natural.
I think a big part of my brand is just being real and being honest and just trying to help. And a lot of times it doesn't even work. Sometimes there's so many projects I've tried that just doesn't resonate, and I'm always, reevaluate. It's like scientific method. I try something, I reevaluate, did it work, blah, 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 move on to the next thing. Yeah. And so I think I'm really good at not hanging on to things that aren't working.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think you also brought up a good point that we tend to sometimes think short term, and maybe that's where the competitiveness, comes in. But if you think like longer term and you realize, so let's compare our two podcasts for an easy example, right? So if you had a podcast already, then we both started our shows around the same time. But let's suppose one came before the other. Then it's easy for the first podcast starter to think like, well, fuck this guy. Like, what is he doing? Like, I'm like, there's only 6 other architecture podcasts at this point in time, and how dare he start an architecture podcast? That's like very short-term thinking. But I think you're totally right that long-term, let's say over the span of 3 years, if we keep going for that long.
It's been 3 years.
It has been 3 years, actually. Holy fuck.
Oh, wow.
But like longer term, it all works out in some way. Like, people who are interested in us will stay with us, and if they're not interested, they're going to go away, and that's just almost like
That's
what
the
it's going to
thing.
be.
It's not like you're married and you are like, cheating on the other person. Like you can have you can share friends, you can like share followers and crowd and audience. There is not like you got to pick one. Like you can only pick one. That's
But that's totally true. I mean, there's a lot of time in the day. Like if you're CAD drafting for 10 hours, that's a lot of podcasts to listen to. But also, like, just after 6 months, you're gonna leave podcasts you're not interested in, or blogs you're not interested in, or people you're not interested in, and it all kind of works out. I think, especially with something that's so, what do you call it, like regimented. You have to do a podcast like every week, or a blog every week, or whatever it is. That at some point, it's whatever that thing ends up being is so totally reflective of who you are, in a way that like there's no possibility where you would have been able to change it, and so like the outcome is almost set in a way. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Maybe, I don't know.
You know what I mean?
It's my second course.
So do you still have time to do podcasts?
Yeah. We I batch them all together. I record a crap ton of them, and then I can't edit it, man. Out of all the things I work on, that's like my least. I can't handle it. I can go in and like add commercials at the beginning or whatever, but I pay a company to edit it, and they write show notes, and then my team gets it up, and I try to take myself out of the podcast as much as I can. I want to record it. I want to have the conversations. I want it to be really good. But after that, let's get it out the door, and I don't want to be a part of it.
That is my dream. That is my that's my future that I envision. My future board that Oprah Winfrey says to do, like on it is like, in the future I will not edit the shit.
It's expensive.
Someone else will do it.
It's expensive. Yeah. I pay a company a lot of money to do it, but it's worth it.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, we do so little editing that I really shouldn't complain. But
I do
all the small stuff. That's the stuff that takes up like all the time.
I know,
and it's not necessarily my passion.
Yeah, I'm a systems guy too. Like, let me set up a system so I could just move it down the line. And let's get this.
You have to be, especially for this kind of stuff. So the other big thing, of course, is the ARE bootcamp, which you have, and as you mentioned, that's the Jesus.
It's the flagship.
Hey, that's your bread and butter, and that's and maybe at this moment the thing that you're most known for. Although I would suspect that the conference is going to be very soon, the next few years, a huge part of why people know you. But you have the ARE bootcamp, right? What is the ARE bootcamp? Yeah.
So ARE Bootcamp, it's I call it a program. It's a program. It's not a class. It's not a college course where I'm going to get up and teach the architect exam content to everyone with a fire hose. It's really a program where I hold people's hands and I show them how I study for the architect exam. And I guide them through this step-by-step process. One of the big mistakes a lot of people make is they, especially for people at the very beginning, they dive into these pro practice exams and they start looking at it with a magnifying glass, the practice management, the project management, the construction evaluation. And the big problem a lot of people have is you can't learn any of these. You can't study for any of these exams unless you're looking at all three of them. And so what I do is I flip the script and I say, we're going to study for all three of them. And then we're going to hone in and study for one of them. And so I help people, I feed them the information in bite-sized pieces to kind of baby step them through this process and get them down the road and take them through this intense experience. And really the goal is not to just pass one exam. I want the people in my bootcamp to pass all their freaking exams and to get licensed. The goal is to create licensed architects. But even beyond that, it's about creating better architects. It's not just about passing tests. I tell everyone, I say, listen, I don't really care about, I don't think we need more architects. I don't don't care about earning NCARB money or AIE memberships or any of that crap. What I care about, what we need is better architects. We need the people who are licensed to have, be passionate, to be knowledgeable, to know how to solve problems, to ask good questions. And I say, we're going to study for the architect exam, and we're going to use it as an opportunity for professional development to become way better at our careers. And, if we're going to set our sight, if we just need to do a minimum, we're going to, double and triple it and really learn this stuff at its core. Because what I see happening is all these people, they're like, I'm busy. I don't have time to study for the architect exam. Just tell me how to do this as fast as possible. I don't want to actually learn this stuff. And that's not what it's about. We chose this career for a reason. How come everyone's trying to skimp their way and cheat their way and not actually learn this stuff. Because after you're done passing tests, the next chapter of your life is about having a successful career. And everything that they're testing is information we need to know to have better careers. And that's where my passion is I say, this is not an exam passing course. This is everything about becoming a better professional. And so I focus on that. And
how long has the boot camp been around now?
Like 5 years.
Wow.
Well, yeah, 5 years.
Somehow it feels longer.
I know. I always say it's like that movie like Groundhog's Day with Bill Murray, where he keeps reliving the same day, except it's 10 weeks long. I've gone through the 10-week boot camp program with like 1,300 people at this point.
How many of them do you...
How many times have you passed the exams?
Yeah. And I've never taken 5.0, but I feel like I have like 1,300 times.
So a bunch of questions. The first is, so how many boot camps happen a year for you?
Oh, I lose track. It goes almost every month.
Okay.
And then I do groups. It's like a design studio. So I put people in groups of like 10 or 12 and, I tell them what to do. They go do it. We come back together once a week, and we talk about what we learned. And then in between that meeting with me, everyone gets on video chat almost every night, and they're studying with each other, and they're working on practice questions and talking about different topics.
So the other question I was wondering is, with the ARA boot camp, people take the boot camp. Hopefully they pass, and then the boot camp's done. Is it difficult to have a sustainable network because of that? Because like once you've done the exams, they're in your past, I move on with their life, as opposed to I don't know, some other kind of organization where people have more reason to continually stay in touch for years and years and years.
Yeah. Yes and no. What I see happening is this program's been so powerful for a lot of people because they're not on an island anymore in a vacuum, and they're studying alongside other people, collaboratively working together. A lot of my boot campers hang out, and they keep hanging around and answering questions and helping people move through and saying, Mike, I want to mentor other people and helping out. And so even though, yes, they've completed their exams, I would say most of them are still hanging around, and they're still pretty active, and they're coming to the conference and all those other things. What's interesting about boot camp is the reason why boot camp is so powerful is, I'm going to give away my big secret right now, is I make everyone do the work. So many people get up there and they put on this dance and they try to teach everything to everyone, and the people studying for the exams just sit back and watch, and they're not actually doing the work. And in my boot camp, I say, listen, I'm going to guide you and I'll help you, but you got to do the work. You got to do the work. You got to put in the time. I work them really hard. And because people are actually, physically doing the work, they're thankful for it because they're learning it and really drilling down. And that's why it's been so powerful.
Right. I mean, it's a very smart way to approach it. Like you said, it's kind of like a design studio in a way, and it makes total sense. And it's almost like it's automatically filtering the people who are less likely to pass because they have the wrong mindset from day one.
Yeah.
If you have the wrong mindset from day one, that being just tell me what I need to know in a bullet point list of 20 things, I'll memorize that, then I'll pass. If you have that mindset, then you're very likely not going to pass, and you're also more than that not going to learn. Period.
And that's a big boot camp's been really good at rewiring people's brains and changing how we look at these tests. Another thing that I forgot to mention earlier is that it's not just about one test. It's about passing all of them. It's about getting licensed. And so I'll tell boot campers, I say, listen, we're going to study for one test together, and this program is going to end. They still have access to, thousands of files and all my tools and all the resources, and, and I still support them. And what's kind of funny is I don't know about you guys, but I get like 300 emails a day. Whoa. I got people all over the country, all over the world asking me questions about stuff, and I've just abandoned email as a form of communication.
It's probably healthier.
Yeah.
We have too, even though we don't get that many emails.
Yeah. So I've trained the boot camp to not email me, to call me on the phone, and so all day long I get phone calls from boot campers asking questions and chatting with me, and that works for me.
Well, man, we've almost gone an hour and a half. The other thing I was wondering, and this is actually more from the presentation you gave this morning, and maybe it's evident in this conversation too, is that you seem to have a pretty deep awareness of like self, of like you're honest with yourself. You know what your interests are. You know you speculate on how to get there. You know your limitations. You have like a higher perspective of how your life operates, I would say. Do you think that would have developed if you weren't basically practicing on your own? Or is that something that only developed once you left and did this business, by yourself? And because I ask that because I sometimes wonder if you're working for someone else and you have a boss and that's what you do, if maybe your, I don't know, deeper understanding of your limitations and abilities it just caps and you're not really exposed to it,
Yeah, this is a great question. I never thought about this before. I think once I started working on my own, being my own boss, really honing in and studying my customers and clients and people that I'm trying to serve. And I think I figured things out. And I've spent so much time interacting and communicating and really figuring out what works, what doesn't work, and moving towards the things that are working. Yeah.
I imagine being on the road too.
I was just going to say, yeah.
And long drives where you're hopefully reflective. I don't know.
Yeah. I can't turn it off in some ways. And like I said, it's become such an obsession, a passion that I'm just it's like, I don't even look at it as work. It's become my social life in some ways. And it's what I want to work on. So.
Well, cool, man. I mean, you're going to keep going and it's exciting and we're happy for you. We're happy for everyone because you're doing this and I think it's going to be amazing. Is there anything else you wanted to announce to the world?
No, I'm just super grateful for being here and chatting with you guys. I've been one of your biggest fans. I've been following you guys for a really long time, and I'm just grateful for our friendship. And thanks for inviting me today.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully you will come out to California more often, and we can do this again.
Yeah,
in person.
I love it.
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to this week's episode of the Midnight Charette, and shout out to our guest Mike for coming out
especially
San Francisco
just for us. He did a road trip just to see us because he was missing us very much.
And thank you for listening. Again, it means a lot. We are at 167 episodes. It's amazing that we've gotten this far, but we're going to keep going, and we wouldn't have gotten here without all of you listening. And if you want to support our show, the best way to do it is to leave a review in the Apple Podcast app, because those reviews mean something, and that's a great way to show us some love.
And actually, a little shout out to Mike as well. He has his own podcast, and you should watch out because we are, the both of us, going to be soon coming out on his podcast individually. Mm-hmm. So stay tuned for that.
So you get to hear what we actually think of each other.
Did you talk about me?
Did you talk about me?
No, I don't think I did.
Oh, okay. Well,
sorry.
I talked about you. All right. What else is there? We're on Instagram, Facebook, Yahoo, Twitter, Google, Microsoft, Outlook.
Yeah, I mean, since you guys cannot socialize anymore for the next few weeks, I would suggest socialize online even more. Listen to all of our previous episodes if you haven't.
Oh, yeah.
And leave us a review, send us some messages, keep us busy.
Anything else?
No, that's it. I mean, stay healthy, stay home.
Yep.
Go buy toilet paper and go back home and
we should sell toilet paper on our website.
With the Midnight Charette logo on it.
You can buy a beer glass, you can buy toilet paper.
Beer glass is still available and the post office is working.
This is true. Yeah. And we will make sure to include a bottle of Purell with every beer glass. All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening, and we will talk to you again next week. Bye.